If you enjoy the content of the 80s Slasher Librarian YouTube channel and would like to sponsor the channel, then see the link in the description below for the Patreon page, and start enjoying the benefits of being a patron of the 80s Slasher Librarian. Freddy Krueger's 7 Sweetest Dreams. Asleep at the Wheel, Part 2 of 2. I was at the wheel with the late-night wee hours upon us. We had long ago passed nowhere, and were now deep in no man's land. Apparently the only thing moving for miles and miles. The land slept, the heart in this heart of the country lying dormant. Most of the freshness of being on the road had worn off hours ago, and the others had crashed out one by one in the back, except for Luna, curled childlike in the passenger seat. Everyone had wound down, tired but happy, swapping dreams and aspirations for the wondrous new promised land of Athens. Finally, we had debated what to call our first album. I was opting for Disillusion. Luna put forth Oral Sex. The vote was 3-2 to hold off until further suggestions were submitted. Out here in the Heartland's fields, the night sky was as rich as black velvet, pinpricked by the stars. 1,000 points of light. While the points of light had sheer numbers on their side, it was still the darkness that gave them form. The darkness held the true power. Reach out and embrace the darkness, make it your own, our credo, our philosophy of life and creativity. We were, however, forgetting one thing. Sometimes the darkness can turn, as a dog to the hand that feeds it, and bite. Somewhere along the way my eyelids grew heavy again. I would shut them for a second for a much-needed rest, then reopen. Roll along, rest them again, while the seconds drew out longer and longer. My chin dropping south toward my chest, and my head snapping up, suddenly alert with momentary panic. Ahead, the river of pavement shone within the twin cones of the headlights, pouring beneath us fluid and sure. My eyes were bleary, my head loose and heavy and taking on ballast. I knew I should pull over, get out and walk for a minute or two, but there was that silly, stubborn pride saying, No, I can beat this, I'm fine. I'm fine. I snapped awake again, realizing that at the side of the road I was periodically catching a glimpse of something in the night, just beyond sight, but stepping closer to the speeding van every time I caught it out of the corner of my eye. A red and green sweater this time of year? Look at it straight on and it would vanish, a dweller of the periphery. I recalled hearing somewhere that if you push yourself too hard too long, your brain would eventually announce that it was time to back off and shut down by hurling dream imagery at you while you're awake. Tiny, crystalline moments of hallucinatory sleep condensing into the waking world. And there he is, while the tide of sleep overwhelms, Freddy Krueger, the man legend says can never be outrun, slipping between those cracks. But all at once I'm awake and alert behind the wheel, wondering what's the problem. No problem here. Never. I will not allow it, for there is precious little to make you feel more free and easy than cruising through the countryside in the dead of night, all alone in your vehicle of choice. No one but you and the stars and the cool night wind whipping off the asphalt, ruffling your hair with the tender caress of liberty. Isn't technology wonderful? Man and machine as one. Suddenly the steering wheel sprouts spurs of metal and they uncoil from within the wheel before I even have time enough to recoil. It can't be. Guitar strings. They're guitar strings. While a cry of alarm strangles within my throat, these heavy-gauge E-strings whip around my wrists, circling under the power of their own frenzied orbits, drawing tight, tighter, nearly cutting off all circulation until my hands are tied securely to the wheel. The same fate has befallen my feet. My left is abruptly lashed back to the seat, while my right is bound to the gas pedal, and the brake might as well not exist. The hammer falls, pedal touches metal, and the van rockets into the night. The lucidity usually experienced in more pleasant dreams returns under fire. I know precisely what is happening. I'm responsible for a van load of the dearest friends I've ever known, while they're zoned out and trusting me to carry them through the night. But I'm asleep at the wheel, and life is out of control. Then, one slim ray of hope. How many times have I successfully navigated myself on foot while sleepwalking? Enough to pray that perhaps I can keep us alive by the same principle, sleep driving. It's not unknown. Others have traveled miles from home without once flickering awake. I watched the dream speedometer climb higher, steady as the sweep hand of an unfriendly clock. The fields on either side of the highway flow past, so quickly that grain looks liquid. I cut loose with a bellow in the steering wheel, with the mind all its own, wrenches a hard right, and sends the van roaring off the road into a cornfield. Corn stalks are mowed down in front of me as if kneeling before a vengeful god, while dust and chaff and corn silk boil into a cloudy wake. Wake up! Wake up! I tell myself, but consciousness will not hear any of it. I no longer feel remotely that it's my dream, that I'm the one in control, but I fear. A true believer born in mere moments, I know just who is in control. The van careens through its nightmare course, a kaleidoscope of landscapes. It burst out of the other side of the cornfield onto a dirt road. Before the onslaught, a bleating herd of 5 lambs scatters. Terrified, the van roars up a steep incline until only sky fills the windshield, and then hurtles over the top to shudder down on the other side. The van plunges headlong down a steep slope, dodging trees like a skier on a slalom course, while leafy branches swat at the windshield, and then screeches a hairpin left turn onto a 2-lane blacktop that even mapmakers have forgotten. Desolation, complete and total. The van holds the course as it rolls me toward a monolithic shape at the side of the highway. It's dark, silhouetted against a blue-black sky, and I know what it is long before the van rolls just past to stop and turn in beside a tumble-down wreck of a marquee amid dry brown weeds. The letters read, "Closed for season, closed forever. Welcome to the drive-in at the edge of the world." The van idles beside the ticket booth out of which he leans, the original architect of misery. He stinks of burned flesh. "Free admission tonight," Freddy tells me, then leans out farther to peer suspiciously into the van. "Not trying to sneak any buddies in, are ya?" He roars laughter as he pulls back into the booth and slams the sliding window shut while the van lurches ahead. Inside, moonlight paints over the vast acreage of bare ground, as brittle as baked pottery and as cracked as a dry riverbed. The scorched earth crumbles under the tires as the van turns down a row of speakers near the middle. Slowly, as if discriminating, got to choose just the right one. When I'm in place, the engine dies on its own. The headlights peter out, and the world is silent but for the whining of a lonely, apocalyptic wind. Tumbleweeds roll across the lot. Ahead, the screen towers, wide and spectral against the sky. Overhead, lightning flickers among swollen clouds. And behind me, the concession and projection building looks to be 3 nails away from collapse. Its shattered windows are boarded over. Cobwebs weave its shroud. And then there's me, tied to my wheel by guitar strings, blood seeping around my wrists. I think of centuries past and their masters of the sea lashing themselves to the wheel during a blinding storm. I fear I'll not prove so brave. I know the mythos. If he kills you in your dream, then you're dead for real. Freddy comes crunching his way across the ground, a darker shape against darkness. He pauses before the van, then drums the blades of the razor glove impatiently across the van's snub-nosed hood, then swings his way around to my window. "So do it," I will him. Asleep at the wheel, dead at the wheel, same difference. Back in the world, my friends will meet the same end. I hope you have a wreck and all die. Ironically prophetic words from a not-so-good neighbor. I only wish I could tell them how truly, truly sorry I am. "I don't believe in you," I tell him, one last valiant fling of defiance with a tight throat. "I know," he says with a brown grin. "That's what makes this so much of a challenge." Krueger snatches up the boxy little metal speaker from the adjacent pole and slams it down just inside the driver's door, bracketing it over the top. He then reaches in to tickle me under the chin with the point of an index blade, and it's sharp. Oh, it is so sharp. "So watch and learn." His footsteps crunch away behind me as I sit shaking at the wheel. Rusty hinges squill back at the projection building. Moments later, the clatter of a monstrous projector ratchets into the night, while a shaft of light spears through the darkness, and two simple words come buzzing out of 1,000 little speakers. It's showtime! Real one! Rowan rolled over on the van floor. He smeared crust of sleep from his eyes, then lay a flat hand on the floor. No vibrations. Probably what woke him up. Let his body get used to trucking along at 65 per hour, he could sleep through airliner-level turbulence. Shut down, though, and hey, something is different. He sat up and straightened his pants. Black leather. They felt like a baggie or something, seating him in with his own sweat. "Pamela," he called out, then checked around. No Pamela. No, nobody. Some kind of bandmates they were. Stop the van and hop out for a quick bite or smoke, or to take a piss, and they didn't even let him in on it. They appeared to be parked at a rest stop in the middle of a lot, without a single other vehicle in sight. Come to think of it, he couldn't even hear any back on the highway that they must have pulled in from. Outside the van, the towering light poles topped with sodium globes gave everything a sickly yellow lavender tone, an ugly color incompatible with nature. Rowan slid out of the van and looked around. The rest stop building looked desolate, unused for months. Dust blew in the air. Ghost town blues. "All right, assholes," he called out, then listened as his voice echoed without reply. Once more, nothing. He looked back toward what must have been the highway, saw the off-ramp that would have led him here, saw the big sign so stupid drivers wouldn't go the wrong way, marked "Do Not Enter." He looked in the other direction, the on-ramp that would put them back on the road. "Do not enter." Say what? You could only get here, you could never leave. Was that it? Rowan muttered a little epithet to himself for the fearful little clutch of his heart. This was seriously uncool. Well, when all else fails, put on some tunes. Music made it all better. It hath charms, and all that. He leaned in through the passenger door and sorted through a case of cassettes, most of which he had liberated from record stores in a roomy pocket or tucked down the front of his pants. Shopping on the budget of the band required creative acquisition methods from time to time. He settled on one and popped it into the in-dash player after switching the ignition key to power on. The tape slid smoothly in and locked into place. And nothing. He whacked at it with his palm, and all the thing did was gurgle out an anemic warble at him. He shook his head, this time directed the epithet toward inferior technology in general, and punched the eject button. To no avail. He poked an index finger into the slot to try and get something happening one way or another. But not this. Something on the inside grabbed his finger, locked onto him with the vice grip of an unfeeling machine, and pulled. Rowan bellowed while watching the rest of his fingers get yanked in up to the knuckles. Pull, pull. He tried to haul himself back out, bracing his free hand against the dash and straining back hard enough to nearly tear his arm loose at the socket. But no, it wasn't giving up. And loud music blasted from the speakers, and then he was in up to his wrist, his elbow. This could not be. There wasn't that much room in one of these things. He could feel the gears and tape heads grinding merrily away inside, while something sharp like blades began spinning in there. He kicked with black motorcycle boots in agonized, frantic, balls-out pain, pain, pain! And when he was in up to his biceps, he happened to thrash his head around to look toward the door, the speaker, and saw ribbons of raw meat oozing out the holes in the speaker grill, piling beneath like beef through an industrial grinder. By the time it had pulled him in up to the shoulder, Rowan wasn't kicking nearly so hard. And shortly after his head disappeared, he wasn't kicking at all. It made the rest of him all the easier to digest, until two scuffed boot tips slid into the slot, as docile as a lamb. He came strolling across the lot from out of nowhere, Freddy Krueger, stopping to lean against the van's open passenger door. With a grin, he reached in and punched one finger onto the player's eject button and watched the blood jet all the way to the back windows. Reel 2! Pamela drove under the purity of a desert moon, and even the wind seemed to whisper her name with longing. It soothed, it caressed, it sent her hair streaming behind her like a bridal veil. Ahead, she saw him through the night, a moonlit silhouette standing atop a crest at the side of the highway, a hitchhiker, awaiting a ride in the dead of the night. There was something familiar about him even at this distance, that asymmetrical stance of hesitant arrogance. She smiled. Fate always had its strange, wondrous way of intervening in lives. The music on her car's stereo was prophetic, an oracle of hypnotic throbbing, sprinkled with delicate downward spirals of electrical piano. And the voice, oh, such a voice! An enchantingly dark promise of mysteries within mysteries, riders on the storm. She wheeled up next to the leveled thumb, and her heart was in her throat with longing as he opened the door and slid in beside her. For a few moments all Pamela could do was stare. He was just the same as she always dreamed he would be, timeless across the years, the same as he had looked in the Gloria Stavers photo session. His dark curls tasseled and regal around sculpted cheekbones, and eyes of such sensual depth she could drown. It was the look of the young lion in his prime, and they shared a celebratory drink of sangria. "I knew you didn't die in Paris," she said. "I always knew. I never doubted for a minute. Jim Morrison raised a tender finger to her lips, gave his head a little shake. "Don't talk. Just feel the night." He smiled. It was dazzling. A night of new wine. He was, of course, right. To speak was superfluous, an insult to the sanctity of this dance of lost souls, now reunited. Locked in its embrace, sweet surrender, she began to drive again, letting his words and music spirit her onward. There's a killer on the road. No speaking, their minds were so finely attuned to the point of oneness. His thoughts were hers. Let's resurrect the pantheon, the ancient tribal elders of sylvan mansions. Deep within her heart of hearts, Pamela knew this had always been destined. She had always had faith that he would find her, or she him. That she was the reincarnation of Pamela Corson Morrison, who had died when the new Pamela was but an infant. The name was the same. As a baby she must surely have been an empty shell, awaiting the soul that would fill her like destiny, until the day of reclamation, when the two of them, like a king and queen, would reascend the throne as avatars of electric shamanism. She had prepared well. The doors had never truly had a basis. On this holiest of moonlight drive she smiled at him across the seat, and he smiled back, his hair billowing like a mane. She could read his hunger as clearly as she read her own. Now, it had to be now. They could wait no longer for one another. To deny their bodies' union would be to risk madness and damnation. "Do you love me? Would you die for me? Deny not my potency. Eat me like this, with grand golden copulations." They folded together, shedding clothes as newborn chicks emerging through hated shells, and she held him close, feeling him press against her belly. And when she drew away, she wondered how she could ever have been deceived. This hideous face of betrayal sneering into her own, with its stink of burnt meat. "The 60s are dead, bitch! It ain't the summer of love anymore!" She felt the cold, sharp, four-pronged thrust into her belly, the warmth of blood running into her lap. And as the final traces of the beautiful, androgynous face slid from her mind, she could whimper only one word. "Why?" "I've always preferred the feast of friends to the giant famine." Reel 3! Weightless she flew, carefree she soared. It was a dream, and Luna was fully aware of that. Such was the only way she could ever fly. Yet it always felt so completely real. cool night air rushing past her face, and the precious scents of earth and water wafting up from below. Luna stripped away her clothes, no longer needed nor desired, and let them flutter down, down, out of sight. Sex had always reminded her of dying, when it was done right, and she regarded them as encounters of transcendence, dark domains of wonder within mystic nights, trying too hard to live, trying too hard to die. Conventional love was annoyingly restricted by gravity. But here, among the clouds, anything was possible. To ride the moon, I just want to ride the moon just once. Like the answer to a prayer, it appeared before her. A vast crescent moon curving down in all its celestial grandeur and blue, white, silver luminescence. She soared for it, and it smiled. Its mouth was so inviting. She lit like a hummingbird straddling, then sinking upon it. As huge as it was, as tiny as she was, it accommodated her readily. Luna threw wide her arms, enraptured, and leaned in to embrace as much as she could. Its skin felt solid but not rocky, cool but not icy. Riding, the rhythm came readily and naturally, while the saddle of its tongue sent delightful chills up through her body. The return of her gravity was so gradual, so subtle, that Luna wasn't even aware of it until it had already happened. The sensation was ghastly, her weight feeling doubly heavy as it crept into muscles, filled bones with lead. Beneath her, the mouth of the moon tightened, sealed over, and down she slid. Luna cried out and tightened her grip, pressing it in with her knees as if atop a wild horse, sliding, sliding. Above, below, and beneath, the moon began to change. Its radiance dimmed, its color deepened to that of steel, and then the shape itself began changing. The crescent began to bend outward, slimming down so that her knees pressed even closer together. Dark clouds whisked past her face and body, washing her with a chilly mist that beaded her bare skin, leaving her wet, leaving her slick. Thinner and straighter by the moment, it didn't even resemble the moon anymore. It had saved the worst for last. The pain, slicing like a razor down along her belly and up between her breasts. She screamed and blood welled up beneath her to grease her slippage all the more. Clutching desperately to balance herself atop this sloping trip of metal, Luna recalled one of childhood's most hideous images. The things children say to one another for the sheer fun of inflicting the ultimate gross-out. Imagine sliding down a 50-foot razor blade into a pool of alcohol. She'd had nightmares for days after hearing that one for the first time. As the blade began to tilt, the angle progressively sharper. Her weight dragged her down with increasing speed, and she looked up to see his face filling the sky. His head was the size of a weather balloon, and the scars of old burns looked tight and raw, sliding, slicing. Luna opened from crotch to throat, and by the time she hit his outstretched, waiting palm, she was beyond caring what she landed in. Real 4! Marley walked into the record store with feet that felt as fleet as winged Mercury's. He smiled shyly at the crowd as they cheered his arrival. He could do this with honor and feel proud. There'd been no compromise to cloud the day ever. Integrity had paid off. A #1 album on the alternative music charts. With long hair and short from early teens to middle age, they parted for him as the Red Sea had for Moses, and allowed him access to the autograph table. He took his seat, flipping the length of his black coat behind him, so it wouldn't bunch up beneath him. Minor bedlam, all these autograph hounds seeking to be first. For the first time, Marley noticed a small laminated placard standing on the table. "Limit 2 albums signed per person, please. The management." Marley shook his head. "One thing before we begin," he called out, and they quieted immediately. "Let's get rid of this, shall we?" He sent the offending card spinning off to one side, out of sight, out of jurisdiction. The resultant cheer was triumphant. The faithful jostled, jockeying for position, and he told them to take it easy, to chill, there'd be plenty of time for everyone. First up was a kid with a shaved head, slapping down the debut album from the Nancy Thompson Grave Watch. The moment was a crown jewel of Marley's life. "Who's this one going to?" he asked. "My name's Colin," the skinhead told him. Marley signed his name with a flourish, and after that the albums came fast and furious. For Lydia, for Michael, for Blythe, someone named Anya had him sign a pair of panties. He scarcely had time to look at each wrist before it was eagerly shoving an album toward him. Next, a badly scarred wrist in hand, the shirt sleeve a worn green and red striped pattern, shoving the album across the table. "And who's this one for?" "Just make it out to Freddy," came the voice. Marley snapped his head up, saw the visage of nightmares, and noticed that sometime within the past few moments the crowd had thinned down to a single solitary one. He backpedaled in the folding chair, but no, too little too late. You can't outrun the boogeyman. Krueger reached across the table and seized him by the neck, lifted and slung him halfway across the store. Marley slammed into a wall lined with display racks of new releases, and dozens of albums went cascading to the floor. He slumped back against the wall, stunned. He blinked, he sniffed, and smelled the stench of burning vinyl. The remaining albums on the wall came pouring from their shelves like thick tar. Marley gagged on the smoke. Floundering as molten vinyl oozed down to his shoulders, his arms, his back, his waist, his legs, drying, hardening, leaving him as trapped as a bug in resin, while Freddy Krueger strolled unhurriedly across the store. He said, feigning interest. "Let's see what we've got here. See if it measures up to, community standards." He used a single blade of the razor glove to slowly slice into the shrink wrap of the album. He balled it up, pitched it, then drew out the disc itself and flung the jacket aside. He balanced the disc by the spindle hole on one left-hand finger, and of its own accord it spun at what Marley was sure would measure in at 33 1/3 RPMs, counterclockwise. He touched one of the blades to the surface, a makeshift tone arm and needle, and it sounded with the muddled garble of music played backward. But then a track Marley knew had never seen the inside of the studio, with the creepy sing-song cadence of children chanting, the last nursery rhyme they will ever learn. Krueger grimaced with satisfaction and ground his blades into the LP's surface, shredding it into flinging shards of vinyl. "Backmasking can be so dangerous to impressionable young minds," he said, and stepped up before Marley as he hung stuck to the wall like some helpless exhibit. "A little editing will take care of that." One vicious flick of the glove opened up a horizontal gash across Marley's stomach. He screamed as Freddy laughed, then gazed down in pop-eyed madness as the burned hand reached into the opening and pulled out tangled handfuls of audio tape, studio quality. The other hand rose and the blades fell, slicing through the tape as if it lay stretched on an editing block. His guts spilled ever more tape, and the blades fell again, until Marley's aspirations, career, life, soul itself, lay piled in a tangle of snippets at his feet. Freddy pulled with one last mighty heave, and this time the pain was more than emotional, for the end of the tape had come at last. It was anchored to something far more solid, and that's when they got down to the real meat of the song. Fade to black. There are no closing credits, and I've seen far, far more than I ever thought I could endure. My only consolation, puny as it is that in saving me for last, Krueger has deprived himself of the struggle of life instinct and self-preservation that seems to excite him so. I don't care about waking up anymore. I'll go willingly. Oh, that'll teach him. I hear the projector ratcheting back down as the beam from its bulb dies in midair. Darkness falls once more as the building door squalls open and footsteps approach the van from behind. The final time, surely, surely. He stands beside the door chuckling to himself, my executioner. As I roll my tear-stained face for a better look at him, I see he looks so utterly self-satisfied, a master craftsman at the close of a long, productive session. "Enjoy the show?" he asks. I muster up enough courage and extra moisture to spit at him. It strikes and sizzles. "I saved the best part for last." Yeah, I'll bet you did. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, with the strength of the dying, to await the final falls of the blades. But he reaches in with his left hand, hot and reeking, and clamps it over my forehead. "Don't you remember?" he says, leering in, while something inside begins to squirm. A memory awakened. I start to follow it from beginning to end, unraveling, now starting to shake with fright at the awful implications. "Wake up!" And I jolted at the wheel, electrified, chin jerking up from its slump on my chest. The windshield was full of generic nighttime highway and headlights. Wrong lane, I'm in the wrong lane. I wrenched the wheel to the right, swerving back into the proper lane. The van rocked, strained, the trailer pulling at it like an anchor. My friends wobbled where they rested, and they seemed so limp, so lifeless. We made it with a good 3 seconds to spare before catastrophe. A pickup went cruising past, the Doppler effect bending the note of its blaring horn down, down, softer, gone. I jammed on the brakes to bring the van to a shuddering stop, drifting over onto the shoulder of the road. I slammed the transmission into park, then looked at my friends. Dead friends. So peaceful looking, as if what had befallen them on the inside had failed to mar the outside. I wanted to cry, but nothing came out. How long had I been asleep at the wheel? It seemed forever. Then again, perhaps it had been mere moments. I had already learned of time's elasticity in the dream realm, a couple nights ago in Springwood on the basement stairs. The basement stairs. Trigger. Mourning the loss of friends took a sudden back seat to the memory. What Krueger had been anxious for me to remember within the dream, it came back this time in the waking world, pure and clear as mountain water. That night of sleepwalking, of Nancy Thompson in the kitchen, and socio-cultural debate before I decided to head downstairs to prove what now seemed the most foolhardy of points. I opened the door and stepped down. The lights don't work, and the basement is pitch dark. There's just the faintest of sounds, the chittering of rats. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. "Anne!" she calls out behind me, just before the basement door slams shut with wall-rattling power. There's a vicious cleaving of the air that must surely be imagination. And the 5th step crumbles beneath me. Old house, old steps, victims of damp rot. I should have anticipated. I started to plummet between the stairs, through them, but I can fly. Falling still, and it's so cold. No, I can't. I slam onto chilly concrete, legs shattering into white magnesium flares of painful intensity. And there I lie, crumpled and broken, while the cold furnace suddenly erupts with flames. The basement is orange, peopled by sinister dancing shadows. Krueger paces across the basement, with the rats swarming about his booted feet, the Pied Piper of hell. He stops, the rats do not, and he watches while they swarm toward me, over me. I'm easy prey. My shriek is thin and feeble. The rats, muzzles twitching, dig in with gnawing yellow teeth. I see their faces are burnt and scarred. The missing 10 minutes finally reclaimed. So I was the first, the very first, his pawn, while he suckered me along until he could claim us all in one fell swoop, here at the gateway to our future glory, our greatest potential. I sat there behind the wheel, numbly trying to get that through my head, then wondering how I could still be thinking at all. And then it came to me. Like the best of psychosomatic illnesses, the effects didn't hit my body until they had occurred to my mind, but hit they did with a vengeance. The only thing that kept me from screaming until my lungs ripped free was that Luna started to move. She uncurled in the seat, her face drawn and haunted in the moonlight, her eyes witness to the fury of her own murder. She gasped and clutched her hands to her belly and chest so recently gutted. They were intact, but that didn't seem to make any difference. One by one, the others began to stir in the back. Rowan, Pamela, Marley. Rowan groaned, then wide-eyed began to curse. Marley began to cry, sobbing dryly with no tears. "Something's wrong with me!" Pamela shrieked in the anguish of disbelief. "Something's wrong!" There was a simple phrase for it, really. Almost a joke. Cold and shaking, Luna reached for me and we clung to one another in a desperate hunger for comfort. Wake up, dead. And when we kissed, we recoiled. The taste of maggots. The road to Athens is long and fraught with peril. We have decided to hang in there, and if we can't make it, get as far as we can. This time the vote was unanimous. It's all we have left, a race against time. We know it's far too late for us to live and thrive there. At least we can die there the second time, the final time, provided we don't decompose before we get there. We all know the myth and now believe. If he kills you in your dream, you die for real. I wonder, though, how long the brain functions after clinical death. During the French Revolution, aristocratic heads plucked from the guillotine basket still gasped in tortured silence, trying to speak, a terrible awareness in their eyes. Children had been pulled out of frozen water, dead, trapped under ice for 15 minutes and more, then revived. The tales are plentiful and mysterious and documented. I know the myth and believe, so I have to wonder, how long do the dead dream? And what happens if he decides to resurrect you in that time? 400 miles from Athens and closing. We're all we have left, ourselves and our singular goal, and we cling to it with peeling fingers, but we don't like to look at one another much more than we have to. Rowan was the first to start bloating with the gas of decomposition. To look at one another reminds us too much of ourselves. Athens, oh please let us make it. It's our one and only dream. For there are dreams of sleep and there are dreams of aspiration. An amazing man, that Freddy Krueger. He knows how to turn both to poison. I think of the importance of myth, from the genesis of humanity all the way to present day. They help the ancients explain the unexplainable and touch the infinite. Today we live in the golden age of science, but I think we need all the more. For so little wonder, good or bad, is allowed in our lives. So little wonder, replaced with the cold logic of reason to leave us with only ourselves to ponder. But the need for myth is no vestigial organ like the appendix. It thrives on, and the myth will never die. It just changes to fit the times. Elvis lives because we can't accept the fact that the music could be silenced. Somehow JFK survived the Dallas bullet that sent part of his head cartwheeling onto the car's rear deck, and he lives today because we need the hope of a new Camelot yet to come. James Dean didn't really die, no, because we love a rebel. And somewhere in the twilight of sleep, a child killer stalks our dreams, a mythic figure for a dark new age. In the end, maybe we need him more than he needs us, because I was at least right on one count. A scapegoat always comes in handy. If he didn't already exist, we would no doubt find it necessary to create him in our own worst image. Fred Krueger, the man, the myth. He's worse than I would have ever believed. Why kill us and be done with it in a moment, when the gradual decay of our bodies and our dreams will feed him with an infinitely greater bounty? Death in sleep, however gruesome, would be far preferable to this. The waking nightmare. Okay, Slashaholics, this has been the conclusion, part 2 of 2 of Asleep at the Wheel, the 5th short story from the anthology novel Nightmares on Elm Street, Freddy Krueger's 7 Sweetest Dreams. Only 2 more of these to go, guys, before I'll have the unabridged version, this short story anthology book, up on the channel. What did you guys think of Asleep at the Wheel? Because I gotta tell you, as far as sticking to, Freddy's dreamscape and how the movies handle his powers and his personality, mixing the horror with the humor, I gotta say this story so far out of the 5 we've done, I think stacks up and meets those standards the best. I'm not saying it's my favorite. Maybe I am saying it's my favorite. I really enjoyed this one. I've really enjoyed all of them except really Briefcase Full of Blues. Didn't feel like a Freddy story, but it was still a good one. But this one felt like a real Freddy story. And, yeah, so, it could have made a movie, I think. I think they could have stretched this out into a movie with the band and everything. I could get that movie feel from it. And I really enjoyed the Freddy parts in this. It wasn't too much. It wasn't too little. You know what I'm saying? It was just perfect all around. Every part of the story, even up to the big reveal twist at the end, which I didn't see that coming, and that caught me really far off guard. But man, what a brutal ending to this story. It's kind of like in the remake of Nightmare on Elm Street, where the remake Freddy tells that one guy, the human brain stays alive for 7 minutes after death, so I've got 7 more minutes to play with you. Just brutal. Guys, please let me know in the comment section what you thought of this short story, part 1 and part 2 here, now that it's concluded. And I'll have the number 6 short story up sometime in the next month or so. It'll be another surprise upload like I do with all these short stories from this book. As always, this upload was brought to you by the patrons on the Patreon page: Cecilia Spears, Sean Campbell, Carl Eakins, Catherine McClear in Hawaii. If you would like to support the channel and help it keep going and growing, click the Patreon link in the description and join up today for as low as $2 to $5 per month. You'll get some great rewards and early access to great content for doing so. Alright guys, until next time, this has been your friendly neighborhood 80s slasher librarian saying, thanks for listening, and pleasant screams!